So, if your pet fish gets sick, don't immediately start analyzing the fish's genetics.
Right. You definitely don't.
Yeah, I mean, you don't put it on a specialized diet, and you
Oh,
definitely don't try to, medicate it right away. You look at the water.
exactly.
If the tank is cloudy or, if the filter is clogged, if the environment itself is just fundamentally toxic, you clean the tank.
It's the only logical first step.
Right. It is an undeniable law of biology that an organism just cannot thrive in an environment that is actively poisoning it. But when human beings get chronically sick,
We completely ignore the tank.
yes, when we feel fatigued, when our hormones crash, or when we face these inexplicable autoimmune flare-ups, we almost always blame the fish. I mean, we blame ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. The guilt is massive.
We assume we just aren't sleeping enough, or we have flawed genetics, or we aren't hitting the perfect macronutrient ratios. But what if the problem is literally just the tank?
I mean, that is the single most important paradigm shift we can make when looking at modern human health. Because our tank, the immediate environment we interact with every single day, it has changed more in the last 80 to 100 years than it has in the entire history of our species.
Which is just a wild thing to think about.
It really is. We are operating in a modern world that is just flooded with synthetic man-made chemicals. And, to be clear, the human body is an absolute marvel of biological engineering.
Oh, for sure.
We possess these highly effective, brilliantly designed natural detoxification systems. But those systems, they evolved over millennia to handle naturally occurring heavy metals in the soil, or, the occasional ingestion of a mild botanical poison or smoke from a cooking fire.
Right, like natural threats.
Exactly. They did not evolve to process the relentless, unprecedented, basically 24-hour assault of synthetic chemistry that we are currently subjecting them to.
Which is exactly our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because, we're not looking at the obvious localized hazards today. We aren't talking about living downwind from a massive industrial chemical plant or swimming in a visibly polluted river. We are going to examine the invisible, everyday toxins hiding in plain sight.
The things you actually trust.
Yes, the products you trust the most, the things you use to get ready for work, your morning coffee routine, the pan you cook your breakfast in, and, I mean, the laptop sitting on your desk right now.
And that distinction is vital.
Yeah.
We often categorize exposure to toxins as this, acute event.
Right? Like spilling a chemical on yourself.
Yeah, you accidentally inhale a harsh cleaning solvent or you get food poisoning. But what the source material for today focuses on is chronic, low-grade, constant exposure.
Right.
It's the cumulative biological burden of hundreds of tiny microexposures from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep.
Mm.
It is the sheer volume, the cumulative load, that ultimately just overwhelms our cellular defenses.
Okay, I do want to set a crucial ground rule right out of the gate here, though. This is not about fear-mongering.
Definitely not.
And we are not advocating for some impossible paranoid lifestyle where you move to an off-grid cabin and try to live in a completely plastic-free bubble.
Which is practically impossible anyway.
Right, and it's biologically unnecessary and just psychologically exhausting. This deep dive is about living with intention. Knowledge is leverage.
I love that phrasing. Knowledge is leverage.
So by the end of this analysis, you are going to understand exactly where these hidden saboteurs are, the mechanisms they use to disrupt your biology, and, how to systematically, calmly swap them out of your life.
Because you cannot strategically reduce a threat you don't actually understand.
Mm-hmm.
Once you grasp the chemical mechanisms, like how these substances interact with your lipid membranes, your cellular receptors, your DNA, you regain control.
You're not just guessing anymore.
Exactly. You can make targeted decisions that profoundly reduce your overall toxic burden without sacrificing, the conveniences of modern life.
Okay, let's unpack this biological baseline first. Because the word toxin gets thrown around in the wellness industry to the point where it's almost losing all scientific meaning.
Oh, completely. It's a buzzword now.
Yeah, people talk about doing a juice cleanse to flush toxins after a weekend of heavy drinking. But in the context of our research today, we are talking about something highly specific. And the threshold for damage is shockingly low.
Very low. In rigorous biological terms, a toxin in this context is a substance capable of disrupting cellular function, damaging organs, or altering systemic communication, often at incredibly low concentrations.
Like, how low are we talking?
We are talking about physiological effects triggered by parts per million, or in the case of some endocrine disruptors, parts per billion.
Wow.
And the vast majority of the threats we're focusing on are anthropogenic. They're man-made chemicals synthesized for specific industrial efficiencies.
Right, to make things cheaper or faster.
Yeah. They are engineered to make plastics more pliable, or to give cosmetics an indefinite shelf life, or to make your upholstery resistant to stains and fire.
So how are they breaching our defenses? Because, I mean, they aren't just magically materializing in our bloodstream. We have physical barriers.
We do, but these chemicals easily exploit our primary physiological entry points. The first is dermal absorption.
Our skin.
Right. And the skin is not some waterproof, impenetrable shield. It is a highly vascularized, porous organ. Many modern synthetic chemicals are designed to penetrate the epidermal layers, often entering the systemic circulation directly.
Okay, what's the second entry point?
The second is inhalation. The alveolar tissue in the lungs is designed specifically to transfer gases and microscopic particulate matter directly into the bloodstream. It operates with massive efficiency.
And the third?
And the third, of course, is ingestion through the gastrointestinal tract via our food and water.
Okay, I want to push back on something you just said because I think a lot of people listening might share this skepticism. Parts per billion.
It sounds insignificant, I know.
It really does. It sounds microscopic. Is a few parts per billion of a chemical leaching out of a plastic really enough to cause systemic biological chaos? It almost sounds like a wellness panic over a statistical rounding error.
It is a highly intuitive skepticism, but it fundamentally misunderstands how our biological communication systems work.
Okay, break that down for me.
Take your endocrine system, your hormones. Hormones dictate your metabolism, your reproductive capacity, your mood, your sleep cycles.
They run everything.
They really do. And your body relies on these hormones to operate at concentrations of parts per trillion.
Wait, parts per trillion?
Yes. Your cells are exquisitely sensitive to these chemical messengers. So if a synthetic chemical mimics a hormone, introducing it at a few parts per billion isn't a drop in the bucket. It is a massive, deafening flood that completely drowns out the body's natural signaling.
Ah, okay, that clarifies it completely. If the system is designed to listen for a whisper, bringing in a megaphone is going to blow out the speakers.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
So what is the actual toll once these chemicals cross that threshold into the bloodstream?
Well, they initiate a cascade of insidious chronic damage because many of these synthetics are lipophilic.
Meaning they're fat-soluble.
Exactly. Because they're fat-soluble, they don't easily dissolve in water to be flushed out by the kidneys. Instead, they sequester themselves in our adipose tissue, our fat cells.
They just sit there and build up.
Yes, they silently bioaccumulate. As this toxic load increases over years, they begin to hijack hormonal pathways, they degrade the integrity of the gut lining, which leads to systemic immune responses, and they accelerate cellular aging through chronic oxidative stress.
But our bodies have natural filtration mechanisms. I mean, it sounds to me like my liver is essentially a bouncer at a very exclusive, very busy nightclub.
I like that analogy.
Right, so this bouncer is a seasoned professional. Throughout the night, a few unruly guests try to get in maybe some natural botanical toxins or trace heavy metals from a vegetable you ate.
Sure, the usual suspects.
And the bouncer easily spots them, metabolizes them, and tosses them out the back door. The club stays safe.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize first-pass metabolism. The liver, supported by the kidneys and the gastrointestinal tract, is exceptionally good at handling that steady, expected stream of naturally occurring metabolic waste.
Right, but what the source material is indicating is that modern life isn't a steady stream of unruly guests anymore.
Not at all.
The chemical environment of the last few decades is essentially a mob of 10,000 people rushing the door of the nightclub all at the exact same time, 24 hours a day.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how robust the liver is. The bouncer is trampled, the doors are broken off the hinges, and the system is entirely overrun.
And when that system is overrun, the resulting internal chaos is what we medically recognize as unexplainable chronic fatigue, severe brain fog, metabolic syndrome, and autoimmune disorders.
It's manifesting as everyday illnesses.
Exactly. Your biological hardware is desperately trying to compile malicious software it was never programmed to read. And to understand the specific nature of this mob rushing the door, the research categorizes the modern chemical threat into 4 distinct functional groups.
Okay, let's break those down. What is the first class of invaders?
Endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs. We briefly touched on them, but the mechanism is fascinating. Think of a natural hormone as a highly specific key, and the cellular receptor as the lock.
Okay, lock and key.
Right. When the right key inserts into the lock, it turns, instructing the cell to execute a function divide, release glucose, initiate sleep, whatever it is. Endocrine disruptors, like the bisphenols in plastics or the phthalates in synthetic fragrances, possess a molecular structure that is just similar enough to natural hormones.
So they trip the lock.
Yes, often they mimic estrogen or androgens, so they can physically insert themselves into those cellular locks.
So they are essentially counterfeit keys. Do they actually turn the lock?
Sometimes they do, and that is called agonistic behavior. They overstimulate the cell, telling it to replicate or produce proteins at completely inappropriate times.
Oh, wow.
But other times, they exhibit antagonistic behavior. The counterfeit key jams into the lock and breaks off. It doesn't trigger the cell, but it physically blocks your actual natural hormones from gaining access. They completely scramble the body's internal communication network.
That is a profound level of biological sabotage. I mean, what is the second category?
Neurotoxins. These are compounds with a specific affinity for damaging neural tissue in the central nervous system.
Like heavy metals.
Exactly. Lead, mercury, cadmium, but also numerous industrial solvents. Mechanistically, many of these neurotoxins degrade the myelin sheath.
Like insulation around the nerves, right?
Yes, the protective lipid layer insulating your nerve fibers. When that insulation degrades, the electrical impulses traveling through your brain and body literally short circuit.
Which leads to what kind of symptoms?
It leads to cognitive decline, fine motor tremors, and severe memory degradation.
Terrifying. Category 3.
Carcinogens. These are substances that actively promote oncogenesis, or cancer development. The primary mechanism here is direct genotoxicity.
Meaning they damage the genes directly?
Yes. Chemicals like formaldehyde, which is shockingly ubiquitous in modern building materials and industrial preservatives, can physically cross-link with DNA strands.
And that causes mutations.
Right, it causes replication errors when the cell divides.
Yeah.
If those mutations bypass the body's apoptotic or programmed cell death safeguards, it leads to uncontrolled malignant growth.
And the final category rushing the door.
Immunotoxins. These substances actively suppress or dysregulate the immune response. A major focus in recent literature is PFAS, and polyfluoroalkyl substances.
Ah, the famous forever chemicals.
Exactly. They're called forever chemicals because their carbon-fluorine bonds are among the strongest in organic chemistry, making them nearly impossible for nature to break down.
So they just stay in us.
They do. When PFAS accumulate in the blood, they impair the function of lymphocytes and macrophages. Your body's ability to mount a defense against everyday viral pathogens, or even clear out naturally occurring rogue mutated cells, is severely blunted.
So if you are listening to this and you feel like you are, failing at health, if you are tracking your macros, lifting weights, trying to optimize your sleep, and yet your blood work is confusing and you feel constantly sluggish, you really need to understand this mechanism.
You're fighting an uphill battle.
Exactly. You are fighting against an environment that is constantly introducing EDCs, neurotoxins, carcinogens, and immunotoxins into your system. Your bouncer is just overrun.
And realizing that should alleviate a lot of the unwarranted guilt people carry about their health. The fatigue isn't a moral failing. It is a predictable physiological response to chemical overload.
Right. It's not you, it's the tank.
Exactly. Which means the solution isn't necessarily more restrictive dieting, but strategic environmental reduction.
Okay, let's apply that strategy directly to the physical environment. We need to move from the abstract cellular biology into the concrete reality of a daily routine. If we trace a typical morning from the moment the alarm goes off, the sources suggest we are walking straight into a minefield of chemical exposure before we even reach the kitchen.
The bathroom is unequivocally ground zero for this exposure. Personal care and dental routines are massive vectors because we are applying complex chemical mixtures directly to vulnerable biological tissue.
So let's analyze personal hygiene.
Sure, conventional deodorants, skin foundations, daily moisturizers, and body washes are heavily reliant on endocrine-disrupting chemicals.
I always read about parabens and phthalates on those labels. What are they actually doing in the formula? Why do manufacturers even use them?
Well, they serve very specific industrial purposes. Parabens are highly effective synthetic preservatives. They inhibit microbial growth, allowing a bottle of lotion to sit in a hot, humid bathroom cabinet for 2 years without molding.
Makes sense for the shelf life.
Right, but structurally, parabens are potent xenoestrogens. They mimic estrogen in the body. Phthalates, on the other hand, are primarily used as plasticizers, but in cosmetics, they're used to make synthetic fragrances last longer, adhering the scent molecules to your skin.
So you smell like flowers all day, but at what cost?
A high one. Phthalates are notorious anti-androgens, meaning they inhibit male sex hormones, and they strongly dysregulate female reproductive cycles. And then we have PFAS, which are heavily utilized in cosmetics like waterproof mascara and liquid foundations.
To make them water resistant.
Yes, to provide that unnaturally smooth, water-resistant finish.
Okay, let's connect this back to the bouncer analogy because I think this is a critical mechanism. If I accidentally ingest something toxic, say I eat a vegetable with some pesticide residue, it goes into my stomach, through the digestive tract, and crucially, the blood from the gastrointestinal tract is routed directly through the portal vein to the liver.
Yes, that is the first pass metabolism.
Right, so the liver gets the very first crack at filtering that toxin before it circulates to my brain or my heart.
The hepatic portal system is our evolutionary frontline defense against ingested toxins, absolutely.
But when you take a stick of conventional deodorant loaded with parabens and the synthetic phthalate fragrances, and you rub it directly into your underarm, which is an area characterized by incredibly thin epidermal tissue and a dense network of superficial blood vessels and lymphatic nodes, you are entirely bypassing that frontline defense.
You are.
The liver doesn't get a first pass.
You are identifying a massive flaw in how we historically evaluate topical safety. Dermal absorption bypasses hepatic first-pass metabolism completely. The chemical enters the systemic circulation immediately.
That's incredibly concerning.
It is. The source material emphasizes that these specific EDCs are routinely detected in human blood and urine samples precisely because they absorb so efficiently. And once circulating, they initiate severe cellular stress.
Like what kind of stress?
They induce mitochondrial dysfunction, meaning they impair the ability of your cells to produce ATP, your core energy currency. Furthermore, phthalate exposure has been shown to alter lipid metabolism, directly increasing insulin resistance.
Wait, let me make sure I'm hearing this correctly. The daily application of conventional phthalate-heavy body lotion could literally be a driving factor in systemic insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome.
Absolutely. The chemical interference with the insulin receptor pathways is well documented in the literature. It is not just about a mild skin irritation, it is systemic metabolic disruption.
That is just staggering. Okay, let's look at the dental routine because the findings on this completely shattered my assumptions.
It's a surprising area for most people.
Yeah, I always thought of the dental routine as the absolute pinnacle of preventative health. You brush, you floss, you prevent cardiovascular disease. But the deep dive data points to some serious hidden hazards here.
The dental routine perfectly illustrates the concept of invisible exposure. Consider dental floss. For decades, the gold standard recommendation has been daily flossing. But many consumers gravitate toward the glide-style flosses.
Oh, the ones that don't get stuck in your teeth.
Right. They're engineered to feel incredibly smooth, slipping easily between tight teeth without shredding. That frictionless quality is achieved by coating the floss in high concentrations of PFAS.
Wait, they are coating a dental health product in forever chemicals?
Yes, they are. The slipperiness is a direct property of polyfluoroalkyl substances. The source material references a pivotal study published in the Journal of Environmental Health Perspectives. They measured blood serum levels of various PFAS.
And what did they find?
They found that women who regularly used a specific prominent brand of Glide floss had statistically significantly higher blood levels of a specific PFAS, called PFHSS, compared to non-users.
Wow. And what does PFHXS do biologically?
It's a potent immunotoxin and endocrine disruptor. It bioaccumulates in the blood and organs and is strongly associated with the dysregulation of the immune response and altered thyroid hormone function.
That's horrifying.
And consider the mechanics of flossing. You are taking a fibrous string saturated in an immunotoxin and sawing it back and forth directly against the highly vascularized mucosal tissue of your gums.
Making little cuts in the gums.
Exactly. This mechanical action inevitably creates microabrasions, providing the forever chemicals a direct, unobstructed entry point into your bloodstream.
It is the ultimate irony. You are actively trying to clear bacteria to prevent systemic inflammation, and in the process, you are basically mainlining forever chemicals directly into your vascular system.
It's completely counterproductive.
And the toothbrush handle is leaching chemicals as well.
Yes. To withstand the constant mechanical stress and exposure to water, toothbrush handles are often manufactured using complex polymer blends that include various plasticizers and occasionally PFAS treatments for durability.
So the plastic itself is the problem.
Because these chemical additives are not covalently bound to the plastic polymer matrix, they're essentially just mixed in. They leach out over time. And this is exacerbated by the friction of your grip and the warm water.
Okay, so you finish up in the bathroom, and maybe you pop a piece of chewing gum into your mouth to keep your breath fresh for the morning meeting. I have to admit, when I read this section of our research, I was genuinely shocked.
Most people are.
I think most people intuitively assume that gum is derived from something biological, right?
Yeah.
Maybe chicle or a natural tree resin. It's sold alongside food, after all.
That was the reality decades ago. But the modern commercial chewing gum industry relies almost entirely on synthetic polymer chemistry. The base of nearly all conventional chewing gum is a substance called polyvinyl acetate.
Which is, what exactly? Because polyvinyl sounds like a vinyl record or a floor tile.
It is a synthetic polymer. In practical terms, it is a form of synthetic rubber and plastic. In fact, polyvinyl acetate is the exact same primary active ingredient utilized in commercial carpenters' wood glue.
You're kidding. Wood glue.
I wish I were. To this synthetic rubber base, manufacturers add a cocktail of artificial sweeteners, synthetic flavorings, and BHT.
Okay, BHT. I see that acronym on a lot of packaging. What is it, and why does the source material flag it as controversial?
BHT stands for butylated hydroxytoluene. It is used as a synthetic antioxidant preservative to prevent the oils in the flavoring from going rancid.
Okay, so it stops it from spoiling.
Right, but the controversy lies in its biological mechanism. While it acts as an antioxidant in the food product itself, once ingested and metabolized by the liver, studies suggest it can induce the exact opposite effect.
Wait, it becomes a pro-oxidant?
Exactly. It generates reactive oxygen species that cause oxidative stress and hepatocellular or liver cell damage in animal models. Furthermore, many commercial gums use titanium dioxide as a whitening agent to make the gum look bright and clean.
And that's bad, too.
Titanium dioxide nanoparticles have raised significant concerns regarding genotoxicity and gut microbiome disruption.
I am still stuck on the polyvinyl acetate. We are essentially chewing on a flavored rubber band. But if we aren't swallowing the gum, how much of this plastic is actually getting into our system?
A deeply concerning amount. Chewing is a highly destructive mechanical action. Combine that with the enzymatic activity and warmth of your saliva. The current research reveals that the act of chewing this synthetic base causes the polymer matrix to rapidly degrade,
Releasing microplastics.
releasing thousands of microplastic and nanoplastic particles directly into your oral cavity within minutes. These particles are swallowed with your saliva, entering your gastrointestinal tract where they can cross the gut barrier, contributing to systemic inflammation and local oxidative stress.
If you are listening to this on your commute right now, just think about that sequence. You haven't even arrived at work yet, and your body's filtration system has already had to process parabens, phthalates, PFAS injected through the gums, and a steady drip of microplastics and synthetic preservatives from your breath freshener. The assault is just relentless.
It requires a fundamental reevaluation of what we consider hygiene products. But again, awareness is the antidote. You cannot alter the formulation of commercial gum, but you can effortlessly switch to a brand that uses a natural chicle base.
Right. All right, let's talk about that commute. You grab your keys, you step out of the house, and you get into your car. Now, psychographically, people view their cars as a sanctuary, you know?
Oh, definitely your own private space.
Yeah, you lock the doors, you roll up the windows, you put on an interesting deep dive, and you feel isolated and safe from the outside world. But the data suggests that from a chemical perspective, you have just locked yourself inside a toxic hotbox.
The automotive interior is one of the most concentrated environments for chemical exposure in modern life. The primary culprits here are semi-volatile organic compounds, or SVOCs.
What's in that category?
This broad category includes the phthalates we discussed, but also a massive concentration of polybrominated diphenyl ethers, which are heavy-duty chemical flame retardants.
Where exactly are these flame retardants and phthalates located in the car?
They are ubiquitous in the materials. Examine the interior of any modern vehicle. The dashboard is molded polyurethane. The seating consists of synthetic foams wrapped in synthetic textiles or treated leathers. The headliner, the door panels, the carpeting, it is an entirely synthetic environment.
Right, it's all plastic and foam.
To meet rigorous international fire safety standards, all of these foams and plastics are heavily impregnated with brominated flame retardants. The phthalates are added to the hard plastics to provide flexibility, preventing the dashboard from shattering if you hit a pothole.
That makes engineering sense, but if the chemicals are inside the solid dashboard, how are they becoming a biological threat to the driver? I mean, I'm not eating the steering wheel.
This is where we need to examine the physics of thermodynamics and off-gassing. What's fascinating here is the nature of the chemical bonds holding these SVOCs within the plastics.
Okay, lay it on me.
They're not held by strong covalent bonds. They are simply mixed into the polymer matrix. They are held by weak, non-covalent interactions. And because these bonds are weak, they are highly vulnerable to thermal energy.
And cars get incredibly hot.
Exactly. When a vehicle sits in the sun, the interior cabin acts like a greenhouse. Air temperatures can easily and rapidly exceed 80 degrees Celsius, which is roughly 176 degrees Fahrenheit.
That is baking.
And the dashboard surface itself can get much hotter. Heat is just kinetic energy. As the temperature rises, the thermal energy vibrates the molecular structures, breaking those weak bonds. The SVOCs transition from a solid or liquid state within the plastic into a volatile, gaseous state in the air.
Ah.
This process is off-gassing.
So the plastics and foams are essentially evaporating toxic gas directly into the cabin.
Yes, and the danger is compounded by the specific geometry of a car. A vehicle cabin represents an enormous surface area of treated synthetic materials, all the seats, the entire dash off-gassing into a highly confined, remarkably small volume of air.
So the concentration is just off the charts.
The ratio of emitting surface area to air volume is staggering. The concentration of these airborne endocrine disruptors and flame retardants skyrockets to levels you would never encounter in a normal home or office.
And then the driver gets in, turns on the air conditioning, which, by the way, typically just recirculates that same toxic trapped air, and takes a deep breath. What happens when we chronically inhale these specific SVOCs?
The respiratory system absorbs them directly into the bloodstream. Chronic inhalation of brominated flame retardants and phthalates is heavily linked to severe endocrine disruption.
Any specific hormones?
The data points specifically to disruption of thyroid hormone metabolism. Your thyroid controls your basal metabolic rate, your energy production, and weight regulation. If you dysregulate the thyroid, you experience systemic fatigue and metabolic slowing.
Wow.
Furthermore, these compounds are strongly linked to developmental neurotoxicity, meaning they impair brain development in children. Children have a higher respiratory rate and less body mass than adults, making the concentration of SVOCs in the car exceptionally dangerous for them.
This completely recontextualizes the new car smell, because I think culturally we've all been conditioned to love that scent.
It's marketed as a luxury.
Yeah, you get into a new car, you take a deep breath, and it smells like success, luxury, and cleanliness.
It is a fascinating psychological conditioning. But biologically, that distinct new car smell is simply the olfactory registration of a highly concentrated cocktail of raw, outgassing solvents, phthalates, and brominated flame retardants binding to your olfactory receptors.
You are quite literally smelling the toxicity of the environment.
That's exactly what it is.
Well, that permanently ruins the luxury of a new car, but it's essential knowledge. Okay, let's transition out of the car. You finish the commute, you get to work, or you come back home for dinner. We need to analyze the kitchen. The kitchen is the heart of the home, the place where we nourish ourselves, but according to our sources, it is a massive trap where the chemistry of cleaning and cooking dangerously intersect.
The kitchen is where we see some of the most aggressive chemical applications in the home. Let's start with the sanitation side, specifically the dishwasher.
A completely ubiquitous appliance. I run mine every single day. What is the hidden mechanism of harm here?
The fundamental issue lies in the formulation of modern dishwasher detergents, particularly the highly concentrated liquid gels in those convenient, brightly colored pods.
I use the pods. They're so easy.
They are, but consider the mechanical challenge of a dishwasher. It has to remove baked-on grease and hardened proteins from ceramics without any actual physical scrubbing. To achieve that chemical shearing, the detergents must be aggressively powerful. They are formulated with extreme alkalinity, frequently pushing the pH level up to 12 or 13.
Okay, let's frame that pH level. Pure water is a neutral 7. We know battery acid is highly corrosive down at a pH of 1. What does a pH of 13 actually mean in terms of tissue damage?
Well, the pH scale is logarithmic, meaning a pH of 13 is intensely basic or caustic. It's essentially on par with industrial lye or heavy-duty drain cleaner.
In our dishwashers.
Yes. Caustic substances destroy tissue through a process called liquefaction necrosis. They dissolve fats and proteins on contact. The source material highlights this as a severe pediatric poison control issue. A child swallowing even a tiny amount of liquid from a dishwasher pod will suffer immediate severe internal alkaline burns and esophageal tissue swelling.
That's horrifying for kids, but what about the chronic daily risk for adults?
The daily risk comes from the chemical residues left behind.
You mean like a film left on the plates after the cycle finishes?
Precisely. The rinse cycle rarely removes 100% of the surfactant and chemical load. Furthermore, when you open the dishwasher door while it's still hot, a massive plume of steam billows out.
Oh, yeah, I always get hit in the face with that steam.
That steam is carrying volatile compounds straight into your lungs. These detergents rely heavily on synthetic fragrances, which we know are delivery systems for phthalates. The sources cite long-term studies linking chronic inhalation of these specific fragrance chemicals to neurotoxicity, respiratory asthma, and measurable DNA damage.
What else is in that residue on my dinner plate?
You frequently find isothiazolinones. These are highly effective synthetic preservatives designed to prevent bacterial growth in the liquid detergent bottle. However, they are also recognized as potent sensitizers and neurotoxins, known to trigger severe allergic contact dermatitis and irritate the pulmonary mucosa when inhaled.
And we're eating off these plates.
Yes. You will also find sodium lauryl sulfate, or SLS. SLS is a harsh surfactant used to create foaming action. At a cellular level, SLS operates by stripping away lipid barriers. When residue remains on your plate and you ingest it, it can degrade the protective mucosal lining of your gastrointestinal tract.
So the plates come out like glycerine, but they are coated in a microscopic layer of endocrine disruptors and mucosal irritants. And then we place hot food onto that plate, which acts as a solvent, pulling those chemicals directly into our meal.
Exactly. The thermal energy of the food accelerates the transfer of the chemical residue.
Let's discuss the cooking process itself, the cookware. We all appreciate the sheer convenience of a nonstick pan. You cook an egg, it slides perfectly off, and you wipe it clean in seconds. But we are paying a biological price for that convenience, aren't we?
We are. The classic nonstick surface is achieved through the application of polytetrafluoroethylene, which is a specific type of PFAS, or forever chemicals.
The same stuff on the dental floss.
The very same. Under moderate, gentle heating, the polymer structure remains relatively stable. The danger arises when the thermodynamic limits are pushed.
Like when you crank the heat.
Right. If you place an empty nonstick pan on a high heat burner, which people frequently do to preheat it before searing a steak, or if you accidentally scratch the surface with a metal utensil, the structural integrity of the PFAS coating is compromised.
And what happens when it's compromised?
The thermal degradation causes the fluorinated compounds to break apart and vaporize, entering the air and leaching directly into the cooking fats and proteins in the pan. You are directly infusing your meal with compounds known to induce severe immunological suppression and hormonal dysregulation.
I see people putting pans in the dishwasher too. Is that a problem?
The sources provide a critical warning regarding cast aluminum cookware specifically. Many households use heavy cast aluminum baking sheets or pots. If you place cast aluminum into the dishwasher, the extreme caustic alkalinity of the pH 13 detergent reacts aggressively with the aluminum surface.
It eats the metal.
It strips the oxidative protective layer and causes the metal to fundamentally degrade. The next time you roast vegetables on that pan, you are leaching high levels of metallic aluminum compounds directly into your food.
Okay, I want to pause here because we are about to discuss the single detail in the source material that completely leveled me.
I think I know which one you mean.
This fact was a massive aha moment that genuinely horrified me. Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to talk about the black plastic spatula.
This is perhaps the most illustrative example of how industrial systems unintentionally create localized toxic hazards. It stems from the complex reality of municipal recycling.
Okay, walk us through it.
We have a massive global influx of electronic waste discarded desktop computers, television casings, old keyboards, and laptop shells. Because consumer electronics generate significant internal heat and carry a constant risk of electrical fire, their plastic housings are heavily impregnated with incredibly potent brominated flame retardants.
Okay, so a massive volume of highly toxic flame retardant plastic enters the recycling stream.
Exactly. When these plastics are sent to recycling facilities to be repurposed, they are melted down. Because you are combining plastics of various colors, ages, and degradation levels, the resulting molten polymer sludge is an unattractive mottled gray or brown.
Nobody wants a muddy gray spatula.
Right. So to mask these imperfections and create a uniform, marketable product, manufacturers dye the entire batch pitch black.
And then they mold that pitch black, highly toxic sludge into cheap spatulas, slotted spoons, and tongs, and sell them in supermarkets for a few dollars.
Yes. You take a black plastic spatula, which is fundamentally composed of the shredded, brominated remains of a Dell computer keyboard from 2005, and you press it firmly into a hot frying pan to scramble your morning eggs.
Oh my God.
The intense thermal energy from the pan and the cooking oil causes the brominated flame retardants to rapidly migrate out of the weak polymer matrix of the spatula and dissolve directly into the lipids of your food.
I am literally stirring my breakfast with melted down, flame retardant computer parts. That is beyond unsettling.
The chemical transfer is significant and measurable. Furthermore, the source of material issues an absolute, non-negotiable golden rule regarding these plastics. Never, under any circumstances, place black plastic, whether a utensil or a takeout container, into a microwave.
Why is the microwave specifically so dangerous?
Because of the physics of microwave radiation. Microwaves heat food by agitating water molecules, generating intense, localized friction and heat. This radiation, combined with the rapid thermal expansion of the plastic, exponentially accelerates the breakdown of the polymer bonds.
It just dumps the chemicals in?
The leaching of e-waste chemicals into your food doesn't just increase, it multiplies dramatically. The sources also note that brightly colored plastics or ceramic glazes, specifically the vibrant reds, yellows, and oranges, frequently utilize heavy metals like lead and cadmium as pigment agents. If the glaze is improperly fired or degrades over time, those neurotoxins leach into acidic foods.
Let's follow that thought into the pantry. I want to look at canned goods because they seem incredibly safe.
Yeah.
If I hold an aluminum can of tomato soup or sparkling water, my intuition says, this is metal. Metal is elemental, it's natural, it's not plastic.
If the can were genuinely just raw metal, your intuition would be correct. But the modern aluminum can is an engineered composite. Consider the chemistry of the contents. If you pour a highly acidic beverage like a cola, which often has a pH around 2.5, or an acidic food like tomato sauce directly into a raw aluminum cylinder, the acid will initiate a rapid chemical corrosion of the metal.
So the acid would just eat through the can.
Within days, the aluminum would oxidize, the can would fail, and the food would absorb a heavy metallic toxicity. To prevent this corrosion, the packaging industry sprays a microscopic layer of epoxy resin plastic on the interior surface of nearly every aluminum can and canned food product on the planet.
Wait, so when I'm drinking a soda from an aluminum can, I'm essentially drinking it out of a hidden plastic bag that has been glued to the inside of metal.
That is an anatomically perfect way to visualize it, and we must examine the chemical composition of that epoxy lining. Historically, the primary structural component of this plastic was bisphenol A, universally known as BPA.
And BPA is a highly documented, incredibly aggressive endocrine disruptor.
One of the most studied in the world. Its molecular structure allows it to bind with high affinity to estrogen receptors, triggering profound hormonal imbalances, reproductive toxicity, an increased risk of specific oncological developments, and measurable behavioral and neurological changes in developing children.
But the industry reacted to that, didn't they? I feel like every can or plastic bottle I see now proudly displays a bright green BPA-free label.
This is where we encounter the BPA-free illusion, which is a masterclass in regulatory sleight of hand.
Oh, no.
When the public outcry and scientific consensus against BPA became insurmountable, the chemical manufacturers didn't abandon the bisphenol class of chemicals. They simply altered the molecular structure by tweaking a few atoms. They replaced bisphenol A with bisphenol S or BPS or bisphenol F BPF.
Just a slightly different chemical.
Because the specific chemical registry number changed, they were legally permitted to slap a BPA-free label on the packaging.
But biologically, does BPS or BPF behave any differently once it enters the human body?
Absolutely not. In biochemistry, structure dictates function. BPS and BPS maintain the core bisphenol structural rings. Therefore, they retain the exact same ability to fit into your cellular estrogen receptors.
So they still jam the locks?
They're equally effective at jamming the locks and scrambling your endocrine signaling. The BPA-free label provides a completely false sense of security. And the source material stresses that the leaching of these bisphenols from the lining into the food is a constant process, heavily catalyzed by acidity.
So the more acidic the food, the more plastic you drink?
The low pH of soda, energy drinks, and canned tomatoes acts as a chemical solvent, actively hydrolyzing the epoxy resin and drawing those bisphenols straight into the liquid you consume.
It feels like chemical warfare in the pantry. What about the alternatives, like those eco-friendly cardboard-style cartons in the refrigerated section used for almond milk or bone broth?
The eco-friendly carton presents a similar illusion. While the exterior structural integrity is provided by paperboard, paper is inherently porous. To make it watertight, the surface in direct constant contact with the liquid is laminated with polyethylene plastics.
So it's still plastic.
Up to 20% of the total mass of those cartons is purely plastic. So whether you choose the aluminum can or the paperboard carton, you are fundamentally interacting with a plastic leaching delivery system.
Wow. Okay. We have covered an immense amount of ground regarding chemical toxicity, substances with physical mass that we can ingest, absorb, or inhale, EDCs, PFAS, SVOCs, heavy metals. But the deep dive source material shifts gears significantly here because there is another category of environmental toxin we are exposed to constantly, whether sitting at our desks or sleeping in our beds.
And this one is entirely invisible.
It has no mass, no taste, and no smell. We need to dissect the biological impact of electromagnetic fields, or EMFs.
This is a vital pivot from chemical toxicity to energetic toxicity. Every modern electronic device, our laptops, our smartphones, our Wi-Fi routers, the Bluetooth earbuds we wear, emits a specific frequency of electromagnetic radiation.
But isn't that safe?
Historically, the scientific consensus was that because these frequencies are non-ionizing, meaning they lack the sheer energetic power of an X-ray to instantly knock an electron out of its atomic orbit and shatter DNA, they were biologically inert and perfectly safe.
Right, that's what we've always been told.
However, as our understanding of cellular microbiology has advanced, it has become evident that chronic close proximity exposure to these synthetic fields induces profound cumulative cellular damage.
The source material focuses heavily on laptops, and there is a stark irony in the very name laptop when you look at the exposure data.
The data is highly concerning. The studies cited in our material evaluated the EMF and electrical current emissions of laptops placed directly against the body. They found that a laptop operating on battery power placed on the lap emits electromagnetic fields up to 49.8% above the established safety limits for human exposure.
50% over the safety limit just sitting there on battery power.
And the risk escalates dramatically with the power supply. If you plug that laptop into the wall to charge the battery while it remains on your lap, the alternating current generates massive electrical fields.
How high does it go?
The emissions can spike up to 483% higher than what is considered biologically safe for an adult.
Nearly 5 times the safety limit, radiating directly into the pelvic region, the reproductive organs, and the major femoral blood vessels. But what is the actual mechanism? If it's non-ionizing, how is an invisible energetic field physically damaging a cell?
The primary mechanism of damage is the induction of severe oxidative stress. When these unnatural pulse electromagnetic frequencies penetrate human tissue, they interact at a subatomic level with our cell membranes and mitochondria. This energetic interference drastically accelerates the production of reactive oxygen species, or ROS.
Let's explain ROS, because this is the core of so many disease models. We are talking about free radicals, right?
Yes, reactive oxygen species are highly unstable molecules. In molecular terms, they possess an unpaired electron in their outermost valence shell. Nature abhors this instability.
So they go looking for a partner.
Consequently, these free radicals become highly reactive and aggressive. They violently scavenge through your cells, desperately trying to steal an electron from any stable molecule they encounter to balance themselves. They will rip electrons from your DNA strands, causing structural mutations. They will attack your functional proteins, causing them to misfold.
That sounds incredibly destructive.
It is. Crucially, they attack the lipid bilayers, the fats that make up your cell membranes, in a process called lipid peroxidation. They are quite literally rusting your cellular machinery from the inside out.
And when that free radical damage outpaces the body's ability to repair it, that state is oxidative stress.
Precisely. Chronic oxidative stress is the foundational biochemical root of accelerated cellular aging, systemic neuroinflammation, cardiovascular disease, and severe reproductive dysfunction.
But human biology isn't defenseless against free radicals. We generate them naturally just by breathing and producing energy. Don't we have an internal fire department designed to put out these free radical fires?
We do. We possess an incredibly elegant, built-in endogenous antioxidant defense system. While dietary antioxidants like vitamin C are helpful, the heavy lifting is done by powerful enzymes manufactured by your own DNA, specifically superoxide dismutase and catalase.
And what do they do?
The sole biological function of these enzymes is to hunt down these unstable free radicals and safely donate an electron to them, neutralizing the threat before it can damage a cell membrane or mutate DNA.
So if the bouncer is neutralizing the free radicals, why do the EMFs cause such catastrophic oxidative stress?
This is where the emerging science is truly alarming. The EMFs do not merely increase the total volume of free radicals. The studies indicate that the electromagnetic radiation actively interferes with the enzymatic pathways. It suppresses and impairs the function of superoxide dismutase and catalase.
Okay, I want to frame this with an analogy because the mechanism you just described is a devastating biological double whammy. It's like your body is a fortified castle under siege.
Okay, I'm listening.
The EMF exposure represents the invading army outside the walls, launching thousands of flaming arrows, their reactive oxygen species, over the ramparts into the courtyard, starting fires everywhere. But the EMFs are doing something far more insidious. They have also infiltrated the castle and actively drugged your own guards, the superoxide dismutase and catalase enzymes. So not only is the castle being bombarded with fire, but the very mechanisms designed to extinguish those fires are paralyzed.
That is a phenomenal and highly accurate analogy. You are exponentially increasing the oxidative damage while simultaneously dismantling the biological repair mechanism.
Keith can't win.
The cellular degradation goes unchecked, laying the groundwork for irreversible chronic pathology. This mechanism perfectly illustrates why the common habit of keeping a smartphone plugged into the wall, resting on your nightstand mere inches from your brain while you sleep, is so detrimental.
Because sleep is when we repair.
Exactly. Sleep is the precise physiological window when your body attempts to upregulate those antioxidant enzymes to repair the day's damage. By bathing your brain in an electromagnetic field, you are actively drugging the guards while they're trying to work.
So what does this all mean? We have painted a highly concerning picture. The tank is cloudy, the bouncers are trampled, the castle's engulfed in flames. We are navigating a daily routine saturated in EDCs, inhaling off-gassing SVOCs in our cars, ingesting PFAS and microplastics, and absorbing invisible EMF radiation.
It's a lot to process.
The instinctive reaction to this volume of information is paralysis. It is very easy to throw our hands up in defeat, declare everything toxic, and just accept the decline. But that is the antithesis of this deep dive.
Defeatism is completely unwarranted here. Knowledge without actionable application only breeds anxiety. The entire objective of understanding these intricate biological mechanisms is to recognize the immense leverage you possess.
You can take action.
The ultimate detox playbook is not about isolating yourself in a hermetically sealed environment. It is about executing highly strategic, informed swaps that systematically reduce the toxic load, allowing your natural bouncers to catch their breath and do their jobs.
Let's execute that playbook. We know the tank is dirty. Now we define the protocols to clean it. Let's begin back in the kitchen, where we just ruined everyone's relationship with their black plastic spatulas. What are the definitive action items?
The foundational rule in the kitchen is the absolute elimination of plastic in all food storage and thermal processing. Discard the plastic Tupperware and the e-waste utensils. Transition exclusively to inert materials. Glass storage containers, high-fired ceramics, food-grade stainless steel, or pure silicone.
And heat.
To reiterate the golden rule, heat and plastic are an incompatible toxic combination. Never subject plastic to microwave radiation or boiling temperatures.
What about the non-stick cookware leaching forever chemicals?
Retire any scratched or aging Teflon pans immediately. The superior, biologically safe alternatives are cast iron, carbon steel, and surgical-grade stainless steel. These materials are structurally inert, they will outlast you, they offer excellent thermal conductivity, and most importantly, they do not deposit fluorinated immunotoxins into your circulatory system.
Perfect.
Regarding hydration, the source material strongly advocates for investigating a reverse osmosis water filtration system for your home.
I want to clarify something on reverse osmosis. My understanding is that the RO membrane is so incredibly fine that it strips literally everything out of the water. It removes the heavy metals and the PFAS, but it also strips out all the beneficial alkaline minerals, creating dead water. I've read that drinking completely demineralized water can actually cause the water to pull minerals out of your own bones to balance its osmotic pressure. Is that true?
That is a very astute observation and a highly valid physiological concern. Reverse osmosis is remarkably effective at removing the microscopic toxic burden, the microplastics, the pharmaceutical residues, the forever chemicals.
But it takes the good with the bad.
However, it does strip the magnesium, calcium, and potassium. If you consume pure RO water chronically, it can act as a solvent, leaching electrolytes from your tissues. Therefore, if you utilize an RO system, it is biologically imperative that you remineralize the water.
How do you do that?
Many high-end systems include a remineralization cartridge that passes the purified water over mineral stones before it hits your tap. Alternatively, you can manually add high-quality liquid trace mineral drops to your water glass. You must restore the electrolytic balance.
Excellent clarification. Okay, we've upgraded the kitchen hardware and the water supply. Let's address the air quality. We discussed the thermodynamic hotbox of the car and the off-gassing SVOCs. What is the protocol?
The protocol is remarkably simple and costs nothing. Harness fluid dynamics, let the air flow. When you approach your vehicle, especially if it has been exposed to solar radiation, do not immediately enter, seal the doors, and activate the air conditioning.
What should you do?
Roll down every window for the initial 2 to 3 minutes of your commute. Utilize the physical force of the wind to aggressively flush the concentrated, volatilized endocrine disruptors and flame retardants out of the cabin.
To blow it out.
Exactly. For your home environment, the most effective intervention is investing in a high-quality, true HEPA air purification system with a robust activated carbon filter. The HEPA filter physically traps microscopic particulate matter, while the activated carbon chemically absorbs the volatile organic compounds off-gassing from your paint, carpets, and furniture.
Let's move to the bathroom, the personal care minefield. I cannot just abandon deodorant or stop moisturizing my skin.
You don't need to. The leverage lies in your purchasing power and your ability to read labels.
Right.
You must become a ruthless editor of ingredient lists. The most critical red flag is the term fragrance or parfum.
Why that word specifically?
Due to proprietary trade secret laws, that single word functions as a legal loophole, masking the presence of dozens of synthetic chemicals, predominantly phthalates. Avoid it entirely. Actively seek out products explicitly labeled as paraben-free, SLS-free, and phthalate-free.
But the reality is when you turn a shampoo bottle around, the ingredient list looks like a postgraduate organic chemistry textbook. How is the average consumer supposed to decipher that?
You utilize the analytical tools that have already done the heavy lifting for you. The source material emphatically recommends utilizing the Environmental Working Group's Skin Deep database.
I've heard of that, EWG, right?
Yes. It is an extensively researched, free, online platform and mobile application. You simply scan the barcode of your lotion, deodorant, or toothpaste. The database cross-references the ingredients against thousands of peer-reviewed scientific studies and generates a hazard score, detailing exactly which endocrine disruptors or carcinogens are present. It entirely eliminates the guesswork.
And for the dental routine?
Eliminate the PFAS-coated Glide floss. Transition to a natural, plastic-free floss spun from silk or biodegradable bamboo fibers, coated in natural beeswax or candelilla wax. If you utilize chewing gum for oral fixation or breath freshening, abandon the synthetic polyvinyl acetate brands.
Stop chewing the wood glue.
Please do. Seek out companies like Simply Gum or Zellies, which
Use headphones.
utilize wired headphones or the speakerphone function.
Yeah.
And critically, you must establish an energetic sanctuary for your sleep.
Meaning, shut the Wi-Fi down.
Exactly. Deactivate your Wi-Fi router before you go to sleep. Do not charge your smartphone on your nightstand within inches of your cranium. Relocate it across the room. By eliminating that energetic bombardment, you stop drugging the guards. You give your endogenous antioxidant enzymes, the superoxide, dismutase, a clear, uninterrupted biological window to neutralize free radicals and repair your cellular machinery.
Those are incredibly powerful, actionable external defenses. But I want to close this playbook by going on the offensive internally. We can reduce the load, but some toxins will inevitably breach the perimeter. How do we actively support the bouncer? How do we upregulate our own physiological detox pathways to clear out the residue?
We accomplish this through targeted nutritional biochemistry and physiological mechanics. Your body desperately wants to achieve homeostasis. It simply requires the correct raw materials. Nutritionally, you must supply your system with heavy concentrations of cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, and cauliflower. These specific plants contain sulfur-rich compounds like sulforaphane.
What does sulforaphane do at the cellular level?
It acts as a powerful signaling molecule. It actively upregulates phase 2 liver detoxification enzymes.
Upregulate, meaning it essentially gives the bouncer a megaphone and extra staff to process the line faster.
Exactly. It accelerates the process of glucuronidation, where the liver attaches a sugar molecule to a fat-soluble toxin, rendering it water-soluble so the kidneys can excrete it. Furthermore, the sources emphasize the incorporation of herbs like cilantro and parsley. These botanicals possess unique natural chelating properties.
Chelation, I've heard that term in functional medicine. How does that mechanism work?
Chelation refers to a chemical process where specific molecules physically bind to metal ions. The molecular structure of the compounds in cilantro acts like a chemical claw, grabbing onto circulating heavy metals like lead or mercury in the bloodstream, forming a stable complex that prevents the metal from damaging tissue while it is escorted out of the body.
Amazing.
You must also fiercely protect your gastrointestinal microbiome, your internal frontline defense, by consuming probiotic-rich fermented foods like unpasteurized sauerkraut, kefir, and kimchi. And equally critical is insoluble fiber,
Fiber acts as the broom.
more like a highly absorbent sponge. When the liver successfully processes a toxin, it frequently dumps it into the bile, which is then secreted into the intestines. If you lack dietary fiber, those toxins can be reabsorbed through the gut wall back into the bloodstream.
It just recycles the toxin.
Fiber binds to the toxin-laden bile, trapping it and ensuring it is physically excreted from the body.
The source material also briefly mentions supplementation.
It does, but this requires a strict caveat. Compounds like activated charcoal, chlorella, and milk thistle extract can be profoundly effective at binding toxins in the gut and stimulating hepatic function.
Yeah.
However, they are powerful binders.
May grab everything.
They don't discriminate well and can bind to essential nutrients for pharmaceuticals. They should only be utilized under the direct guidance of a qualified healthcare practitioner.
Finally, let's discuss the most visceral physical action of all, sweating. We need to talk about the mechanics of the lymphatic system because I think it is one of the most misunderstood systems in the human body.
It is entirely misunderstood, yet absolutely vital for systemic detoxification. We easily comprehend the circulatory system, your blood vessels. It has a massive, powerful, centralized pump right in the middle of your chest, the heart. It forces blood through miles of arteries under high pressure. The lymphatic system, conversely, is your body's primary subterranean sewage and waste drainage network. It collects cellular waste, dead pathogens, and accumulated toxins from the interstitial fluid surrounding your cells. But here is the critical physiological difference. The lymphatic system is entirely static. It possesses no central pump. It does not have a heart.
If it doesn't have a pump, how does the fluid move? How does the garbage actually get taken to the dump?
It relies entirely on physical mechanical compression. The lymphatic vessels are woven through your skeletal muscle fascicles. When you physically contract your muscles through walking, sprinting, lifting weights, or the rhythmic bouncing of rebounding on a trampoline, that muscular contraction physically squeezes the lymphatic vessels.
Like squeezing a tube of toothpaste.
Exactly. One-way valves prevent backflow, so the toxic fluid is systematically pushed upward toward the exit routes and the circulatory system for final processing by the liver.
So a sedentary lifestyle literally causes your internal sewage system to stagnate.
Precisely. Stagnant lymph allows toxins to accumulate around the cells. The source material heavily advocates for aggressive physical movement to drive lymphatic flow. It also recommends dry brushing, using a stiff bristled brush on dry skin, sweeping toward the heart, to manually stimulate the superficial lymphatic capillaries just beneath the epidermis.
And then sweating it out.
And finally, you must utilize the exit route of the skin via sweat. The research strongly supports the use of traditional dry saunas or infrared saunas. Sweating is an evolutionarily ancient, highly assertive passive mechanism for flushing sequestered fat-soluble EDCs, heavy metals, and phthalates out of your system.
This all circles back to the guiding philosophy we established at the beginning. Live with intention. You do not need to pause this deep dive, run into your kitchen, and throw away every item you own. You don't have to fix everything by midnight.
It'd be impossible.
But you can choose to swap out that deeply scratched nonstick pan this weekend. You can choose to actively roll down your car windows on tomorrow morning's commute. You can choose to buy the glass food storage containers instead of the plastic ones on your next grocery run. Every single small, intentional choice is a brick in the fortress of your biological defense. It is a calculated investment in your cellular longevity, your daily energy, and your metabolic health.
That is the exact takeaway. By comprehensively understanding the mechanisms of these invisible saboteurs, how the EDCs bind to receptors, how the SVOCs off gas, how the EMFs disrupt your antioxidant enzymes, you transition from being a passive, confused victim of your environment to being the active, informed architect of it. When you systematically clean the tank, the brilliant biological machinery within you will naturally recalibrate and thrive.
We have covered an immense expanse of scientific territory today. We have analyzed the murky fish tank of our modern environment, navigated the dermal absorption of the morning routine, calculated the thermodynamic off-gassing in our cars, exposed the recycled e-waste hiding in our kitchen utensils, and outlined the biochemical defense against invisible EMF radiation. We have armed you with a comprehensive, actionable playbook to reclaim your physiological baseline. But before we conclude, I want to leave you with one final, deeply profound concept to analyze.
We have spent this entire deep dive examining how our fully developed adult biology is currently struggling to process and adapt to the sudden, massive influx of synthetic chemistry. We are fighting a daily battle against compounds like PFAS that literally refuse to degrade. But I want you to expand your perspective to the broader timeline of human history. The environmental shift we've discussed has occurred entirely within the last century, which is a microscopic fraction of a second in evolutionary time. If the foundational chemistry of our daily environment has changed this drastically, this rapidly, how is this inescapable chronic chemical pressure going to shape human evolution moving forward?
That's a huge question.
What biological adaptations or what systemic degradations will become apparent in the physiological makeup of the generations being born entirely into this modern chemical soup? Will the human organism eventually mutate to process plastic polymers? Or will the cumulative weight of this toxic burden fundamentally alter the trajectory of our species?
That is a staggering, necessary question to carry with you as you navigate the modern world. A massive thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Start implementing those smart, intentional swaps today. Clean your tank, empower your bouncers, and take absolute control of your biological environment. We will catch you on the next one.